Today is Wednesday. It is June 30th, 2021. Thanks so much for joining us. January 6th, we need to talk about it more, while there are many people who are trying to get us to talk about it less, because of what happened on that day really signifies a divide in this country in terms of which direction this country is going to go for the foreseeable future. We're going to discuss this at great length, not only this morning, but we're going to continue this conversation as we go because of the magnitude of that conversation. But there are several other conversations that we need to have first, and we're going to start with On the Clock with Georgia Ford.
As many of you know, Gwen Berry is under fire again for her actions during the Olympic trials while the national anthem was playing. It's not the first time that she took a stand for racial injustice during the Olympic trials or anything related to the Olympics, right? And each time she does this, there's all of this backlash. And so it leads us to a conversation today about making protesting palatable, right? Because when you see someone like Gwen Berry, an esteemed Olympic medalist who is using her platform to build awareness, on one hand, you would say, well, that's peaceful, and she's doing what she can to speak up about things that are wrong. On the other hand, we see individuals who really criticize when protesting in the streets gets out of hand. It turns into rioting, it turns into looting. But where do we fall on the spectrum of what is okay? And this notion and this idea of making protesting in America palatable, it is something that we need to explore more. But before we do, I want you guys to take a listen to what Gwen Berry had to say the last time she got in trouble for protesting during an Olympic ceremony.
The International Olympic Committee, they love the stories. They want to pitch, oh, well, this athlete grew up without a father, or this athlete grew up in the ghettos. This athlete had to go without food for months and months. They say, oh, no, you can't talk about racial discrimination in black and brown neighborhoods. Oh, that's not for you to talk about. But that athlete is literally a product of that system. It's hypocritical, because here I am, a black, broke woman, saying that what they're doing to other black people is wrong, and I was punished for it. I was disgusted. I just couldn't believe it. Thomas Bach, I know you want to keep the Olympics a place of harmony and focus solely on sports. You demand athletes like me to push past our limits and strive for excellence. It's time for you to do the same. You need to get rid of Rule 50 and come up with something else. Standing up for what you believe, pushing for impossible dreams, that is the Olympic spirit. I'm ready for Tokyo 2021 and my next podium. And when I get there,
Dwayne.
I want to be able to raise my fist and my voice without being punished.
So Gwen Berry there, I think she laid it out very clearly why she uses her position, her power, her voice, and why others should be allowed to as well. And I think her advocacy also made a difference within the culture of the Olympics, debating Rule 50, which is a longstanding rule that has been used against other athletes who've used their platform for activism. Ben, I want to bring you in on this as well. You know, we and meaning the black community get criticized when we go to the streets to protest when there's police killings, right? Kaepernick, he was ridiculed. It pretty much ruined his entire career using his platform to build awareness. And now here we see an Olympian who, despite the fact that she's been placed on probation, had to fight to get that overturned, she continues to use her platform, but she continues to be criticized for it as well, and pay a price.
We need to be sure that we're clear that there's no acceptable form of protest in this country. Not for black people, not for marginalized communities, and not for poor people. And the reason I say that is because we need to flip it and look at the reverse. Every form of protest from white conservatives is acceptable, all the way up to treason. Whereas here, this Olympian cannot make a First Amendment protected demonstration of her dissent with this current situation of black lives in this country. While everyone is acting as though this is so highly controversial, the fact of the matter is this is in the backdrop of exactly how far America will allow white conservatives to protest in this country. So I want to make sure that we have those things side by side so that we can see exactly how ridiculous this backlash that she's facing really is.
And I'm glad you framed it that way. There's no appropriate protest. There's no acceptable protest in America for Black people. Yet and still, we can see our white counterparts, our white colleagues, our white neighbors storm the Capitol, and that is acceptable. And so it is to me to see an athlete who, instead of walking in privilege and becoming disconnected from these issues, right? Because let's be clear, Gwen Berry could take her gold medal and go out to the suburbs, and she don't got to think about what's going on. She just doesn't. She can focus in on her career, but instead of disconnecting and saying, you know what, I've arrived at a place in my career, I've elevated enough where a lot of these things don't personally affect me anymore. Instead of disconnecting from the very struggle that gave her the fuel to do what she's doing today, she is now she's taking that with her. She's embracing it and saying, you know what, I am going to bring your struggle on a larger platform. And now that I have this platform, make people aware of the things that are happening in my community where I'm from that aren't right. And, it's interesting that the Olympics, and especially with it being more of a global platform, this is just beyond America. America wants to show up on this platform as the land of the free and the home of the brave. They don't want to show up as the land that be killing Black folks and oppressing them still, even centuries after they're emancipated, right? And so it's this kind of hush hush, be quiet, do what you're supposed to, take this check, go home, and that's the end of it. And that's where they want to leave it. But for people like Gwen Berry, who has a reality of living in Black skin in America, she can't do that.
Right. And here's the thing, Georgia. I love the way that you just framed that. The fact that they want to separate her from very fuel that got her to the Olympics in the first place. I mean, like on every level, that is absolutely analysis, and it's an important fact for us to understand. They want to separate us from the very thing that gives us our life and gives us our very edge. Our competitive edge is our Blackness. And it is the sum total of all the struggles of all of our people that is quite literally encoded in our DNA. We talked about this last week with one of your guests, and they want to divorce that very real, tangible difference, which is rooted in our Blackness. They want our Blackness, but not the power thereof. The best way I could sum it up. They want our Blackness. They want to gentrify it. They want to own it. They want us to stand on that Olympian stage and represent America, but deny the very real experience that drove us there in the first place.
Well, and I'm hoping that, at least for Gwen Berry, that she doesn't face the ongoing backlash that Kaepernick faced, because taking a knee, to be honest with you, ruined his career. He did so at a time. You got to think about this. Kaepernick took a knee before George Floyd. And the reality of America before George Floyd was America wasn't ready to have the conversation about police killings being representative of modern day lynchings. America wasn't ready to have that conversation before George Floyd. And so Kaepernick was ahead of his time. his protest cost him a lot. And it's interesting even to see the NFL backtrack after George Floyd happened. Then the NFL, along with so many other corporations, were ready to make these statements. We're ready to acknowledge that we had a problem because now all of a sudden it was the thing to do, despite all of the consequences Kaepernick had to face because he simply took a knee. And then it was interesting to
Mm.
be here in Minneapolis when the third precinct was burnt to the ground. The first time in our country a police station was ever set on fire, right? Then now all of a sudden it's okay for Kaepernick to take a knee. Just don't go burn down the police stations. Right
Right.
now, all of a
Right.
sudden, that form of protest is palatable enough for white America and it's okay. But on a global stage, you still have athletes like Gwen Berry who are facing backlash and potentially career consequences for using her platform in that way. I thought we'd learned this lesson already with Kaepernick, right?
Right.
But here
Right.
we are, and now we have another athlete who's being ridiculed and criticized for simply using her platform to say, hey, there's still ongoing injustices
The
that the Black
International
community
Olympic
is facing
Committee,
in
they love
America,
the
and we need to
stories.
get it right.
They want to pitch, oh, well, this
Yeah.
athlete.
No, Georgia, you're absolutely, this is absolutely the case. And so look at how quickly they reset the bar, right? When Colin Kaepernick took a knee, all hell broke loose in this country and he lost his career. And I don't care what people say about his endorsements. I'm quite sure he would rather have been on the football field knowing the person and the athlete that he is. It ruined his athletic career. Then we did exactly what you said, right? Like the protest after George Floyd, it escalated and the people all of a sudden were like, oh, okay, nope, Colin Kaepernick is cool. But now look how quickly they reset it. They've reset it. Now we're right back to zero where this quiet, silent form of protest is unacceptable. That's the game. They're going to always push us a little bit further, and then they're going to reset it. They're going to agitate the situation. They're going to kill us. Police officers but they're going to reset the expectation. And now the expectation is you should not protest this country in any form or fashion, even in silent protest.
So it's just like it goes back to like what is acceptable. And I think that there has to be some level of accountability when you think about how we get to the point in America where nobody was listening when you had Kaepernick taking a knee. Nobody was listening when you had mothers whose children were killed by police going and saying, hey, we have a problem. Nobody was listening. Nobody was listening until these kids
Yeah.
went out here and set the third precinct on fire. And let's be clear, because that was the moment during the George Floyd protests that people realized, okay, we need to do something, because they will literally burn down every single city in this country. That was a moment
Oh, yeah.
that
So
people
the kids
started
ain't
to
playing.
listen. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But that was the moment when they started to listen and say, okay, corporations started making statements, policymakers, politicians, schools, everybody started saying, like, at that point, voices were heard. How do we create a culture in America where voices can be heard without buildings having to be burnt down?
I'm going to be very careful how I answer that question, because the truth of the matter is Dr. King, I'm going to paraphrase him, but riots are the voices of the unheard. Like this is you can guarantee that if you do not listen to us in the temples, you're going to listen to us in the streets. This is no form of threat. This is just a fact of humanity. If you make it impossible for us to be fellow citizens, then you are creating a scenario where we are going to be enemies. And the country has to make its mind up, because right now we have a house divided. We have a house divided that one side is entitled and privileged enough to be able to march up the steps of the Capitol and attempt to overthrow this democracy and not be seen as treasonous traitors. On the other side, you have those of us who are protesting against the murder of Black lives, and we are the ones that are looked at as rebels. When in fact, that's the other side that are sowing the seeds, not even sowing the seeds. They are actively committing acts of treason and getting away with it while we can't take a knee.
It reminds me too, for those of you who know my husband, Ceriso Fort, he's a former professional boxer. So boxing's huge in my world. Muhammad Ali. Even going back to Muhammad Ali refused to go to war. And that was his form of protest. Muhammad Ali used his platform to build awareness about racial injustices as well. And going back even that far, he received the same backlash. And it frustrates me, Ben, because I feel like the more success that Black Americans reach, right? You elevate, you're given, it's almost like you're given this this stage, you're given, white America is giving you these different things, elevating you, and then that comes with an expectation that you talk a certain way, that you dress a certain way, but ultimately that you leave your Blackness at home.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I'm sorry. Like you dropping gems in t-shirts at the same time. They want us to leave our Blackness at home when it's time for us to represent this country. But they don't see nothing but our Blackness when they pull us over, when they in that elevator with us, when they lock their doors when we're walking by in their neighborhoods. See, they want Blackness. Again, they want the form of Blackness, but deny the power thereof, because the power of Blackness, I mean, this is quite literally true. I am so fascinated by the branch of science that shows that the trauma of Blackness and the trauma of slavery is literally been baked into our DNA, into our genetic code. And that is from where our sister is running and doing that's where look at the feats, not just the athletic feats. That's one area where they love to keep us, right? But not only in that area, but in every area. It is a strength that is encoded in our Blackness, because we have had to be survivors of everything this country has ever thrown at us. And they don't want us to use that for our own liberation. They want us to use that for their entertainment.
And I just always I would try to be like solution oriented. And I don't know what it's really going to take to advance these different institutions. And there's so many institutions. And I think where my mind always goes back to is this. We have allies who have done amazing things. And I'll be clear, white allies. We have white allies who have done some amazing things in the last year and a half. And it's so needed. And then we have some other people who, and it's not just exclusively white, but just people who are not Black, who are saying, how can I help? What can I do? Or shrugging their shoulders and saying, I don't know if there's anything I can do. There's absolutely you serve on a board somewhere, you volunteer somewhere, you're a part of different communities. Start where you are, use what you got, do what you can. Because we heard Gwen Berry call out the chair of the IOC, because he's the one in her realm, in her world, who is upholding this silly white supremacy. Just silly. And so I just want to encourage people, whatever communities you're a part of, whatever boards you serve on, whatever institutions you're in, you can absolutely make a difference. There is no reason why a Black woman in America should get in trouble for putting her fist up.
Come on.
Or for peacefully turning her back on the American flag because she doesn't feel like it represents her. We should be cultivating spaces for people to express themselves in that way. We should be embracing, if anything, encouraging it, because at the end of the day, it allows someone who feels oppressed, and maybe even going beyond that, not just who feels oppressed, but who is oppressed, to express themselves in a peaceful, productive way. And if we don't create those spaces, if we don't take ownership for the communities we're a part of and create, cultivate, and encourage spaces that allow for that type of protest to happen, then you can expect, it might not be the next police killing, but maybe the one after that, that is going to happen again, that something's going to burn because America is not changing. And the reality of what does it look like for America to change? The reality of what that is, it looks like you changing. It looks like you doing something in your boardroom. It looks like you doing something in the schools in your community. It looks like you doing something at your workplace. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And if y'all don't start doing that now, if you don't start creating those spaces now, I promise you, we're going to be in the same situation we were last year. And it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. And that's the terrifying thing about this, is that they have us in a vicious cycle. They being this structure, this system. And when we talk about these systems, these systems are absolutely operating the way they're designed to operate, which is on the backs of Black people. And these systems, they have us in a vicious loop. They have us in a vicious loop, but it's spaced out enough for us to not really understand what's going on. Right. This is what we're doing right now in 2021, is the continuation of what happened in the civil rights movement. We have unfinished business, but in this way, they have us reset now so quickly with, as it pertains to this sister and Colin Kaepernick. And we saw in the middle, in between those two events, we saw these white supremacists march up the steps of the Capitol on January 6th with only one person dying. And I say it that way because had they been Black, all of us would have been dead out there. So it's a very stark difference in terms of how this country and how this system looks at and treats our protest in terms of our survival. We're not protesting to overthrow an election. We're trying to tell this country to stop killing us. And they bring out the tanks. But they open the door for the Capitol on January 6th. So, I want to do this here, Georgia. I want to because we have a whole list of guests here, and we are making some adjustments. I want to take a quick break. I know Anthony we're trying to get Anthony in the conversation. We have a long list of guests that are coming up in our Like It or Not segment. So I want to bring in DJ Exclusive to help us get a few seconds here to reset, and we want to make sure that we connect with all of our guests because it is a very busy morning. We definitely want to continue this conversation. We'll be talking coming up next about January 6th, specifically about the security implications, about not only the security implications, but the implications for Black people as we continue to play this game with America, or rather as America continues to play this game with us. Are they going to hold the people accountable for January 6th? And if they do not, if this country does not, what does that mean for our future? DJ Exclusives, take us to a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome again to Like It or Not. Coming up right quick, excuse me, y'all. But anyway, we're going to get this thing going and see if we get everything straightened out. Y'all, it's Like It or Not. It's on the clock with George Fort. Let's get it. Let's go.
In the right place to move. In the right place for you. Always stay up all night. Watch the neon light. Touch your one second numb. Heartbeats like a drum. Be the fantasy. Give it some to me. Stay in this moment. Just hold on, hold on. We like tonight, babe. Tomorrow it's gone. You in the moonlight. It's all that I want. It's all that I want. It's all. We can touch the sky, babe. It's a natural high. I know I'm alright when I
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
do me funky, funky, give it to me. Give it to me funky, funky, give it to me. Give it to me funky, funky, give me that beat, that funky, funky. Give it to me funky, funky, give me that beat, that funky, funky. Give it to me funky, funky, give it to me. Give it to me funky, funky, give it to me, baby. Face towards the stars.
Tiger, good morning. Good morning. This is Give It To Me Funky by House of Say, y'all.
Touch your ones like on numb. Heartbeats like a drum. Feel the fantasy.
Trying to give y'all a good old groove. It is the end of Pride today, but Pride goes 365. Let's not forget that. But the end of Pride Month, as the America, country, the rest of the world celebrates it. But hey, remember, Pride goes on 365 a day, okay? A year, excuse me. It's the coffee. It's the coffee.
It's all. We can touch the sky, babe. It's a natural high. You know I'm alright when I look into your eyes. Give it to me, funky, funky. Give it to me. Give it to me, funky, funky. Give it to me. I'm not going anywhere. Maybe it's because there's something in the air.
Seven Sweetheart Melanie, good morning, y'all. Lisa Noel, good morning, everyone.
No, I don't even care anymore. It's like we're losing our
That's right, all Pride, all the time.
one thing on my mind. Baby, one day I'm hoping that you will be mine. Turn my life around. Wow. So where do we go when everything feels like it just stays the same? Where do we go?
Shout out to everyone that's streaming us this morning, y'all. YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're streaming from. Make sure that you hit that like button, y'all. Share, comment, subscribe, so you know when liking or not on the clock and everything else on the Benjamin Dixon Show channel is going down, y'all. Let's go.
Let's get down to the beat. Yeah, it's like I'm stuck in this mystic cloud, waiting for something I can't get out.
Happy Hump Day, y'all. Hump Day. I think every day has a name. They got Taco Tuesday, nothing for Monday because it's Monday. Hump Day for Wednesday. Thursday is Friday Eve, and Friday is Friday. That's right. All right. Shout out brother Chuck Diesel on that. Hey, good morning.
Turn my life around. Where do we go when everything feels like it just stays the same? Where do we go from here when everything is said and done? Where do we go when everything feels like it just stays the same? Where do we go from here when everything is said and done? Come over, we start it all over, and let's get together now.
All right, y'all. Welcome back.
We can find a spark in
Benjamin Dixon and Georgia Fort, y'all.
Welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, non-gender conforming individuals, Georgia Fort. But we are also joined by Anthony Galloway. Georgia, I want to continue this conversation and I want to expand it a little bit further. And thank you so much, Anthony, for always coming in to expand that conversation. But Georgia, I want to toss it to you because I think this conversation is really important for us to really understand where we stand in this country as Black people, whereas our protest, simple silent protest to stop police from killing us, is treated with more force than insurrectionists who try to overthrow this country. And I'm not sure if we can hear Sister Georgia. You're on mute.
So
there we go.
So you bring up a good point. I think there was about 520 people that have been charged for different crimes on January 6th. But the thing that stood out to me was that no one has been charged with murder or manslaughter or for the 5 deaths that occurred on January 6th. No one has been held accountable for that. And I think that when you juxtapose that against an Olympian who is simply putting her fist up or turning her back to the flag during the national anthem, we have some very serious issues here in America, the way that we respond when Black people are standing up and using their voice in a peaceful way, versus when white folks are storming the Capitol and breaking all kinds of state, city, and federal laws. And so with Anthony, I'm so glad you're here because I know that you have more of the historical perspective of like, this is not the first time that we've seen Black athletes ridiculed for using their platforms.
Absolutely not at all. Of course, we remember iconically the 1968 Olympics, where two of our brothers, of course, were ostracized, but also, of course, their ally who just wore a button insignia and had the Australian athlete, fifth fastest in the world in his event, that was went back and his career was gone as well. We're just getting Peter O'Toole's story in that regard. But Olympic protest is not it's not new. And what's interesting is it's been in place. It's happened several times over the course of the Olympics. We forget that in 1906 there was Olympic protests. I mean, an Irishman climbed the flag or climbed a flagpole. Overtly. We had Russian Olympians who just chose to look away from their flag because of what was happening. We see whole delegations of Olympic athletes seated, particularly in protest to what was happening in a big national space. And so I think it goes with this through line of which protest is allowable and which protest is not. Do we talk about the protest against what's happening in folks' countries and lives? That's one thing. I mean, we have the Iranian judo Olympian who refused to engage in a match with an Israeli opponent because of what was happening there. So the protest piece is not new. I want to call attention and add to the fact, just for some equity, the fact that we have seated and not seated countries for not going along with the quote-unquote global zeitgeist. We seem to have attention to when there are atrocities that are happening in a particular world, as long as everybody is informed that it doesn't hurt the Olympic Committee's bottom line. I think we need to be clear about that. So protest is allowable when it doesn't rock the boat in terms of the interests of the IOC. But where protests are particularly fine, especially when we choose not to hold an Olympics in a certain place. Is that not an act of global protest against what's happening in the country? But yet that's not on the table. So I think there's a definite through line between all of those things. And then the only other piece that I'll bring up is the overtness of the disparity. It's not just on the margins. People died, officers, law enforcement died as a result of January 6th. Even in Minnesota, where I'm, on the ground, we had outside folks come in and burn down a precinct and have been held accountable and are being convicted, of arson for it, with 0 deaths. And yet one is looked at as something, to the tones of terrorism, and yet January 6th is not. And we actually have legislative blocking of even investigating it. So I think there's some contextual things that are necessary in this conversation.
Yeah.
You guys, this is such an important conversation because the framing here is really going to show us what kind of condition we're absolutely in. Because Anthony, as you outlined, like the stark differences between what we're after in our protest and how this country responds to it, it really shows us that American democracy is optional for white supremacy in this country. Like a democracy is just optional because they've shown that they will overthrow this democracy in terms of their protests. They fundamentally believe in the Jeffersonian idea of the right to revolution, but their revolution and nobody else's. And they want to restrict us all the way. This is how far we cannot have a revolution in this country. We can't even get on the Olympic stage and protest silently. without having the full backlash of the conservative movement. And if we show up in the streets, we have the full backlash of, quite honestly, the military industrial complex, because those tanks were first used over in Afghanistan.
There's
the fact that they'll call the people on January 6th patriots, right? And even when you look at narrative and how important narrative is, here you have Gwen Berry, an athlete, and she's going against the tradition, and people, even I believe it was Ted Cruz, called her out and said that she hates America. When do we get to this point in our country where people hate America? Originally the national anthem was supposed to be a time where we could all come together despite our race, religion, sex, social status, etc. We could come together. But let's be clear, in America, when have we really ever been able to come together? And let's also be clear, what's also true is that if you take a knee during the national anthem, it doesn't mean that you hate America. That's not what that's saying. Gwen Berry putting her fist up or turning her back during the national anthem is not saying that she hates this country. She's actually saying she loves it enough to use her platform to say we can do better and we have to do better. And if we can't agree to disagree, if we can't start to see, like, just even the basis, right? The base of what she's saying, and it's being twisted and perverted into something that it's not. She's being accused of saying she hates America when she never, ever, ever, ever said that.
Because to them, and Anthony, I would love to get historical context on this in terms of all the previous Olympic protests. To them, Black people protesting America means we hate America. For them, they believe that them protesting America is patriotism. Anthony, what do you think?
What is coming front and center to my mind right now is Frederick Douglass's "What to the slave is the 4th of July." Since we're coming up on the 4th of July anyway, I mean, I might as well go there. I think there's some very clear things. People who are against America don't participate in its systems. And we see very clearly that protest has become a part of our fabric and is part of our culture. I mean, protest was there when Ruby Bridges was walking into the building. There were people protesting and holding up her in effigy in a baby coffin as a doll. So there's some cognitive dissonance in that regard. But what comes to mind in this space is we see folks that are actually participating in making the systems better and calling them out and saying, this is what we want to see. I think it's very important to point out that in all of the protest work that we've seen around police reform, around the injustices and the inequities, there is an ask. This isn't a protest just against something. There is an ask that says we want to see X, Y, and Z, and this is what will make the world better. That level of participation is the most patriotic thing possible, right? And so I think that needs to be called into question. But then, we go all the way back to Frederick Douglass, and this is the staying power of our historical cycle that I wanted to put back in front of us. He says in his speech on that day, he says, this holiday of which we celebrate only underscores the immeasurable distance between us. That one of us, that one side of us celebrates an independence that always has this asterisk for me and my people, to paraphrase. And so, who is participating? Who is being the most patriotic? Well, I'm going to say it's the folks who are participating in making this democracy better. That is in the tradition of this mythos that we put in front of us. And I think patriotism, trying to call somebody else on their patriotism for critiquing for change, especially when it's change to make somebody's own personal lives better, that has no effect on you. I think that's an important piece of this too, that the positive changes, these positive changes that are being asked for, do not negatively impact the folks who are resisting it in and of itself. So again, we have a situation where Black protest is not held to the same standard or same degree or same degree of appreciation as the protest of, in this particular space, conservatives who are protesting protesters. So there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in here for me.
Georgia, I think it's intentional. I think they know. I for years I thought that they were they being conservatives and some Democrats. I thought that maybe they just didn't realize that their logic was bad. I'm at the stage where I think they know full damn well that they have some cognitive dissonance and they're using that. They're gaslighting us. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think that we are being gaslit as we have been since the inception of this country. And I also think that, you know, I've been asking this question to a lot of people lately as we talk about racism more and more, right? Like, how many people have you met that identify as racist? You don't. Racism is not something that you just proudly attribute to your character. You don't just like, yeah, you know, hi, my name is Karen and I'm a racist. Like, people just don't do that. And so the reality of racism and discrimination in this country is it shows up in people being complicit. It shows up in people in people's resistance. Think about that. You talk about, Anthony, the difference of the way Black America views Independence Day and the way white America views Independence Day. And now even we have Juneteenth, but let's remember the 14 Republicans who voted against it. Trevor Noah said it best. Imagine being so racist that you don't even want the day off of work. And so racism, let's be clear, doesn't always show up in someone calling you the N-word or saying, I hate Black people. Right. Oftentimes it shows up in the resistance of the forward progress and advancement of Black America. When you have white people who are actively resisting the advancement of Black Americans, that's racist. So it's absolutely intentional. Yeah. It's absolutely intentional. And I think that we have to start calling it what it is. And that white folks have to get so radical in their love for Black people that they stop saying, I'm not racist. And they start saying, I'm anti-racist. And you start cutting off the friendships and the cousins and the uncles and the aunties who, you know, behind closed doors is actively resisting the advancement of Black people.
Yeah.
I think,
Brother Galloway, Anthony, I want you to get the last word. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you. I want you to get the last word on this. And I want to personally thank you again for coming in and sharing your insight from historical perspectives. Where do we go? Like, let's talk to the audience. Like, how do we handle? First, we got to understand that they're gaslighting us, right? How do we handle it? And then what do we do about it?
You know, that's a great question. So one of the things that I have grown up with, especially with the elders here in my local area, is to think about when you're in this gaslighting situation. One of the things that we are ruled by then is the whims and the moves of that particular project. If we divorce ourselves from that project and say, what do I define for myself, and let that be the guiding thread, if folks are going to treat you this way anyway, and we've seen that historical record, then you might as well do the things that work best and most healthy for you. I mean, a simple answer is that.
Do what's best and healthy for you. Absolutely. Anthony Galloway, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to come back and we're going to be joined by Dr. Carl Mack. We're also going to be speaking with Adrienne Lawrence of TYT Overruled. She is an award-winning author as well as an attorney. And we're also going to be joined by Captain Anthony Barnes. He's a retired U.S. Naval Aviator, Naval Academy Class 1981, as well as LaTosha Brown of Black Voters Matter. So we have a large conversation. We're going to expand it, and we want to get to the bottom of some of these things because we can't afford to keep getting gaslit by this country. We'll be back more with the Benjamin Dixon Show, like it or not, and on the clock after this break.
Good morning again, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning again. Make sure that you're hitting that like button, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, y'all. And like it or not, it's coming up next, so let's stay tuned.
There ain't no doubt she's got a
Shout out to B. Had to make sure I play this song. It's the last day of Pride, y'all. Happy Pride Month again.
So don't despair. She's got what you want. She's got what you need. You know she's got everything. So boy, don't you cry. Leave all your worries behind. Just come to mama. Come on. Just come to mama. She'll take care of all of your drama. Baby boy, just come to mama. She's gonna make it alright. She doesn't always feel like she's a queen, but you better not forget it. So bend the knee, and if you wanna be a knight,
Lisa Noel, I love you too.
your loyalty, you better listen to me. She's got what you want, she's got what you need. You know she's got everything.
Y'all get a chance to see my big old arm. This the other one. There you go. I'm hulking over here, y'all. Good morning, y'all.
Just come to mama. Come on. Just come to mama. She'll take care of all of your drama.
At least let me give y'all something to look at least on it. Boom. There we go. Tattoo. There we go. You're black. There we go. There, right.
Running up the line. Yeah, I know she's stressed, but that makes me even impressed. 'Cause she juggles it all.
Exactly, Stu the Dragon. If the shoulders are moving, you know that it's Bubba, y'all.
My desire, she sways her hips and I.
Good morning again, y'all. Make sure that y'all hit that like button, y'all. Make sure that you hit the like button. Industrial Arts Denver, thank you for your super chat, sir. Said pride never ends. Big love to you, Bubba. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate that.
Baby boy, just come to mama. Come to your mama. Just come to mama. Just come to mama. So take care of mama. Baby boy, just come to mama. I've got a feeling this is the night.
Shay T, they did, but it's okay. It's all right, because you still see the lamp is illuminating in the background, so it's going to change those colors for us, all right? That camera is popping today, ain't it? Boy, look, I look good. Look at that. Ooh, I ain't got no hair no more, I forgot. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Make sure that you hit that like button, share, subscribe, y'all. Shout out to everybody that's on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you are streaming from, whatever channel you are streaming from. We appreciate you. We love you so much, y'all. Like it or not, it's coming up next, so make sure you stay tuned. Savage Sweetheart, get out of my chat. Talking about get ready for Bubba's OnlyFans. It's already up. Love y'all, mean it. Y'all stay tuned. Barrett, I appreciate you. Shout out Laura Estrada for her super chat. Thank you, Line Family, for all this love and fight. This community is where change truly can happen. Laura Estrada, thank you, man. We appreciate you. We love you. I just got a text message from somebody telling me to wake up. Let me send them a copy of this link real quick. And we're going to shout them out this morning. Giving me Daft Punk vibes right here. Nat, hey, do not wreck your car, Nat. Please do not wreck your car.
I'm a little bit naughty. I'm a little bit too consumed, but every part of my body is telling me to run away from you. Come a little bit closer. Yeah, yeah. Come a little bit closer. Yeah. You're a little bit crazy. It's been days, but you never change. What's love got to do with it? He comes around, better knock that stuff down. Come a little bit closer. Yeah, yeah. Come a little bit closer. Yeah. So all my ladies who got a brother that doesn't treat them right, put your finger right in his face and tell that man bye-bye. I'm too fly. I'm too fly. Bye-bye. 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 You're a little bit selfish. You get mad every time you lose. You can't take me with you. I'm scared you're gonna blow your fuse. Come a little bit closer. Yeah, I can really start over. Yeah, in the back of my mind, there's someone waiting on me. You're just wasting my time because you're scared and lonely. Finally got some closure. Yeah, I can finally start over. Yeah. So all my ladies who got a brother that doesn't treat them right, put your finger right in his face and tell that man bye-bye. I'm too fly. I'm too fly. Bye-bye. 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 Here's to the memories. Cheers to who used to be. Your friend said that you left me. I'm glad that's what you believe. All my ladies who got a brother that doesn't treat them right, put your finger right in his face and tell that man bye-bye. I'm too fly. Too fly. Bye-bye, bye-bye.
You stay home and be nice. Boy, I will be gone all night. I can't find by myself, 'cause I won't be here alone. No. You don't know what you got. You don't know until it's gone. You don't know what I am worth. Your words are like bullets now. Sometimes they hurt. I stay high when bullets fly. Out of reach, won't be coming down. I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it ends. I'm gonna dip on your shoulder, and I don't need to pretend. Yeah, we are alright, alright. We'll spend another night, I just wanna get lost. It's the only thing I wanna do. I wanna forget where I came from, where there's no getting over you. I am fine by myself, 'cause I won't be here alone. No, no. You don't know what you got. You don't know until it's gone. You don't know what I am worth. Your words are like bullets now. Sometimes they hurt. I stay high when bullets fly. Out of reach, won't be coming down. I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it ends. I'm gonna tap on your shoulder, and I don't need to pretend. Yeah, we are alright, alright. I won't spend another night, night. Can't wait till it's over. Can't wait till it ends. I'm gonna
Welcome back, everybody. We have a busy day this morning. Again, obviously, today is Wednesday, June 30th. It is coming up to the top of the hour. We have quite a few guests that are going to join us to discuss all of these conversations that we have ongoing, both January 6th, as well as the differences between how we are treated as Black people in this country in terms of our protest compared to the insurrectionists of January 6th. We have several guests joining us now. We have Georgia Fort, who's still with us. Obviously, we have Dr. Carl Mack, who's been with us on a regular basis. He is our historian. We are also joined by Adrienne Lawrence. She is the author of an award-winning book, and she's also the host of TYT's The Young Turks Overruled. She's going to be joining us in this conversation. And we're also joined by Captain Anthony Barnes, who is a retired U.S. Naval aviator, Naval Academy class of 81. And the conversation is going to expand even more. But let's start here because we have such a large panel. I want to start with Captain Anthony Barnes because Dr. Mack pretty well. And he sent over some photos that I want us to take a look at and that will properly contextualize your viewpoint on January 6th. I want to pull up that photo, Dwayne, if we have it ready. It is a photo of Captain Barnes, and he is speaking and he's giving advice and counsel to Condoleezza Rice and Dick Cheney on 9/11. And so as it compares to everything, Captain Barnes, that we're talking about in January 6th, could you speak to the significance of the security threat to this country that the insurrectionist attack that we saw on January 6th actually poses to this country? And thank you for joining us for this very important conversation. Okay. All right, so we're going to take a quick pause there, and we're going to come back to Captain Barnes when we get that connection. I want to go with Adrienne. Adrienne, you are here on the screen with us, and we just got through talking about the Olympic athlete. Our sister,
just so you know, I have
as a champion,
a video, but I have no.
That her protest is unacceptable. I want to start there because we know very well that no matter how high we go, they don't want our full Blackness. They want the Blackness that they can monetize and capitalize on. Talk to us about that.
Well, it seems that very much the narrative that we see every day is we want you to forget the past. We want you to forget the oppression, and we want to forget the subjugation that you are currently experiencing and the legacy of the historic oppression because we don't want to have to confront and face it. When it comes to Black people worldwide, there is considerable oppression that continues to go on, and people want to ignore it. Just earlier this week, the UN put out a historic report saying that essentially across the world, countries need to do better in terms of addressing discrimination, racism, particularly against Black people. Anti-Blackness is everywhere. And when it comes to the United States, there is a considerable issue when it comes to confronting our past and our history and making amends for it. And that's something that, it seems that Americans are struggling to do. And when we protest, it just reminds them of the fact that they continue to oppress us.
But they absolutely love They love our Blackness so much that they commodify it, that they gentrify it, that they make it palatable for themselves, and then they repackage it and distribute it. But they want our Blackness, but they don't want our struggle. So I mean, what do we do as Black people in this kind of scenario when they're making serious money off of our Blackness, but they want to deny us the opportunity for liberation for Black people?
Oh, absolutely. Because, as the American way, if they can't commodify it or some way profit off of it, then they don't want it. And the fact is that if they have to actually treat us like whole human beings and individuals and recognize the oppression and the pain, then what's the point in having us? It's a thought that we're just objects for their pleasure and, enjoyment. And so, hey, why have to treat us like human beings? That's something that they're not here to do.
Mm.
Mm,
I think you
absolutely.
both bring up such a valid point on, the capitalism, right? When you look from a legal standpoint, Adrian, we are supposed to have the protection of the First Amendment when we're going out here and we're protesting. In fact, a lot of the people who went out on January 6th to protest, they were out there protected under the First Amendment. But when we go out, we're met with militarized police, tear gas, rubber bullets, and it seems as though we're not protected by the First Amendment from a legal standpoint. How do we start to combat this new culture in America? And maybe it's not new, because when you look back at the civil rights era, they violated the First Amendment back then. But how do we combat this culture in America that prevents us from safely going out and peacefully protesting, even though it's supposed to be covered under the First Amendment?
I think we have to recognize definitely that as much as the First Amendment is supposed to say all of us are equal, that is so not the case, nor was it written with us in mind, or even women in mind. The thought that it would only protect white men, that is something that still holds true, whether people want to say that's the case or not. And until we confront that and we acknowledge it as a nation, then we're going to continue to have instances like this, where when we protest, it's problematic. When we use lawful means and do nonviolent things to raise our voices and raise concerns under our purportedly First Amendment right, we are still met with a thought that this is problematic and how you all are doing it is wrong. And thus we face violence from law enforcement. That state-sanctioned violence is something that the Black community has faced for centuries and will continue to face until America recognizes it and makes amends.
And that we will still continue to see the exploitation, because what they've effectively told all of our athletes is to shut up and dribble, shut up and run. Right. And we're going to continue to see that exploitation. But there's a limitation to how much, we can put a lot at the feet of conservatism because that's appropriate. But there's also a limitation to what some of these good, well-meaning white liberals want in terms of our Blackness. And I think every one of us in our respective careers, we've seen not only this from like Republicans, but we've seen this when it comes time to really parsing the nuances of what it is to be Black in this country. I can speak from my personal experience, and then I want to bring in Dr. Mack into the conversation, but I can speak from my personal experience in this media space. I got the same kind of resistance from some well-meaning white liberals and progressives when it came down to really talking about the differences. Dr. Mack, what have you experienced in your profession in terms of people who may not think that they're racist, people who would never say that they're racist, but when it came down time for your Blackness and our fight in this country, they got a little uncomfortable?
You know, my mama always told me, she said, Carl, when you really want to know how white folks feel, try to be equal to them or try to surpass them, and you'll absolutely get the realness of what happens with them. Now, when you start talking about how we protest in this country, and you want to speak to how ugly this racism thing is and how real it is, it doesn't matter how we do it. I'm reminded of July 28, 1917. There was an event in New York called the Silent Parade. You should look it up. It's an eerie, beautiful moment where women and children dressed in all white just marched down the streets of New York City, men in Black behind them. The only sound that was made was the beat of a drum, and it was a muffled kind of sound. They had problems with that. When Ali met in 68, I believe, 67, the Ali Summit, all these other Black athletes came around, and Ali, wanting to exercise his constitutional right as a conscientious objector, they stripped him of his title, had problems with it. We marched on Washington in 63. They had problems with it. No matter how we protest, and then when you take a look at Kaepernick, or even go back to the 68 Olympics, right? With John Carlos Smith, clenched fist, they got problems with it. Same way with this sister. Now you got Cap. Doesn't say anything, just simply takes a knee. They got a problem with it. There's a reason why no matter what we say about our condition, that they have a problem with it. It is the quintessential actions that they're showing of racism. So I never try to argue with a fool, personally, truthfully, I love when they show their hand, because I'll say it again, the white supremacist is not the issue. The white liberal, that's the problem.
Adrienne Lawrence, I'm dying to hear what you have to say about that.
I couldn't agree more. And we see it all the time. Unfortunately, people who claim to be liberal, progressive, they're in this arena where they think, hey, I'm making change and it's a whole new world. And in the same vein, they're out here using coded language or essentially hogging the mic and not allowing people of color, primarily Black people, to have a turn at essentially using their voice and actually uplifting the community and making change. It seems to be something we recognize too often nowadays, where it's a lot of talk, but when it comes to action, it's non-existent.
And being the quintessential example of that from our history, the letter from a Birmingham jail. Who do you think King was writing that to? King wasn't writing that to the Klansmen. King was writing that letter to white clergymen, men of God. That's who he was writing it to. And when King talked about it, he said, the rest of the world is moving with jet-like speed, and we're moving at horse and buggy pace. So, our history is there. So I agree that white liberalism, that those are who we must absolutely be on the guard for.
I want to bring Georgia. I want you to speak on this, because one thing that I just heard from both Adrienne and Brother Mack is that the white liberal will actually. I want to hinge it on something you said, Adrienne. You said that they hog the stage. They also hog the resources. Right. There's a very controlled mechanism in terms of the resources that are released to Black people, whether you are a white conservative or whether you are a white liberal. And one of the most stark places that we have, I've personally seen it, and I know you have, has been in media and our ability as Black people to tell our own narratives.
Absolutely. And when you think about liberals who tend to pride themselves on being progressive and inclusive, a lot of that boils down to lip service. And it is convenient for them to pride themselves on those things, to market their companies with those core values. And to your point about resources, and leverage the resources that come along with being progressive and inclusive. But when the rubber meets the road, they don't want you bringing that rhetoric, and that's what they call it, into their spaces. And at the end of the day, they also have the privilege still of unplugging from that movement and from that struggle and going to their cabin on the weekend and going on, their vacations and going overseas. And so, Brother Carl, when you talk about how we're moving so much slower, when you look at other countries, they don't have the same, for the most part, the ones that we look to in being advanced, they don't have this same dichotomy that we're having here in America. And so I think that we have a lot of work to do in our country in terms of embracing the Black struggle. And I am concerned because we saw all of these corporations make these statements last year and pledge all of this money. And yet and still, those pledges are yet to be accounted for. And so time and time again, we have these false statements that are put out of who's our ally and who's standing with us. But it's not even been a full year. And people are nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found.
And Georgia, if I could, I have a personal example of that. And I remember I was watching CNBC, and Bank of America made this huge pledge on the heels of the death of George Floyd. And to this point of Black media, and the relationship and the respect that I have for Black media. I reached out because I know that Black media was struggling severely behind the pandemic, lack of advertisement and all of that. And a friend of mine that I was on the board of trustees at one of the colleges is tied in with the hierarchy at Bank of America. So I put the challenge to him that, look, Bank of America has pledged this incredible amount of money, and I'd like to talk to him about doing some major advertising with the Black press. So as soon as I made that call, he made the connection. We got to talking. And when we talked about real issues that was going on in our community, all of a sudden the conversation just completely stopped. Emails went unanswered. Since then, I haven't heard anything from them. So to your point, if you looked at a report card on what all of these companies said on the heels of the murder of George Floyd, and here we are just a little over a year later, I guarantee you the majority of them, the overwhelming majority of them would get an F. And that includes Disney with the way, when we're talking about the way that they deal with Black folk when we have our voice. I'm still not forgiving Disney for what they did to Jamel Hill at ESPN.
There's two quick things.
Right.
Two quick things. Louis, you look at all of these companies that made these huge pledges, and they're still making them today. When they put their press release out about how much money that they were going to give and invest in Black businesses or the Black community, usually there wasn't an application. It wasn't like here, click here to apply. So how did they select people for that money? Where's the transparency in their process? And then the other thing that I was going to say is, when you look at this capitalist approach to solving the issue, why couldn't they have done this before? Why did this have to come at the cost of Black death? With the media piece, Ben, we talk about this a lot. When you're showing up even on these social platforms, it's easy to get funding and advertisement if you're doing DIY videos, if you're doing beauty videos, if you're doing comedy sketches. But when you're doing stuff like this and you're talking about real social and political issues that impact the Black community, they pull all of the funding and all of the money that you could receive in comparison to other content creators. They do.
Oh no, they absolutely kill it. And Adrienne, I know this is our world. Like this is your work with TYT. You've seen it, and in your own individual work. We literally are engaged in a nonstop fight with Facebook and YouTube as it pertains to what videos they will monetize and will not. I have more videos demonetized with Facebook than I have monetized with Facebook. And those the ones that they demonetized are anyone that is talking about police, any video rather, that's talking about police violence against Black lives, anything that's talking about, like, if I even so much as say white supremacy, I've gotten flagged before. But if I talk about Donald Trump, oh no, the sky's the limit. I can get 2-3 million views if I do that and make all kinds of money. But if I talk about liberation in this independent media space, we get nothing. Adrienne, you've seen this too.
Absolutely. And I know it to actually be kind of their policy and practice. And the thing is it goes as well for issues that predominantly impact women, such as sexual assault, rape, violence. These are power structures in play. These are gender hierarchies, racial hierarchies. This is all a system of oppression that white, cis, hetero systems and the dominance to keep everyone held down. And they really leverage it to the point where we're not able to thrive in any way. And having worked for major media outlets, I have been in on marketing and PR meetings where I was told you cannot mention certain words in your broadcast or you'll lose advertisers. For example, Black Lives Matter. I would lose an advertiser if I happen just to say that word. And this is post George Floyd. So the reality is behind the scenes, there are so many opportunities to have conversations and for people to use their platforms to have those conversations. But then these same companies who are out here making these pledges just a year ago, what they're doing is penalizing you and punishing you if you dare talk about issues that impact the Black community.
And sister, I would tell you what shut down Bank of America, right? Because we were talking about having a platform for Bank of America in particular to come to the Black community. And he started talking about their contributions to the art world and this thing. And I said, listen, brother, we don't really want to hear that. What we want to know is we want to understand your history of redlining in the Black community. it stopped. Everything went absolutely cold. So to your point, the moment you want to hold their feet accountable for what they have done within our community, well, you've gone a step too far. Sister Jamel Hill wants to be that Black voice and talk to us. Sister, you've gone too far. And so, for me, I think the question is, as a collective of Black media, I think that we need to come in as a coalition and go directly to Facebook and bring Facebook to our platform and say, answer for that. And if you want to send the Black guy to explain it, that's okay. He's Facebook as far as we see. He ain't our kin. He might be in our skin, but and so we need to have those bring them to our platform. And again, if we could do that from a collective standpoint, and you got all of us from around the nation, because Ben, I literally had that, and I had no idea about the games that Facebook could play with Black media via their algorithms.
Oh, yeah.
I've spoken to 3 different people within the media source, within Black media, who have described the type of games they can play. But listen, I'm going to cut that off because I see Sister Brown is with us, and I know she's on a tight time frame.
Yes. Yes. We have this morning joining us now on the screen for the conversation, Sister LaTosha Brown. She is co-founder of Black Voters Matter, and alongside friend of the show, Cliff Albright, who's been on several times. And we're also joined by Captain Anthony Barnes, retired U.S. Naval Aviator, Naval Academy class of 81. Thank you both so much for joining us this morning. We want to expand the conversation as it pertains to January 6th, as well as what we are getting in this country as Black people, but more specifically, what we're not getting. LaTosha, I know you're on a very tight schedule, so I want to start with you. We have seen white supremacy go all the way to the Capitol and into the Speaker of the House's office, but we can't seem to get that institution to protect Black votes here. Like we are seeing the juxtaposition of these two realities is really a slap in the face for Black people.
No, absolutely. That's why I think, first, thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me on the show, and good morning, everybody on the panel. It's been a great, rich discussion so far. I think we have to shift kind of even the paradigm of how we see this. I think it's a couple of things. So yes, you're absolutely right. We are seeing white supremacy almost flagrant, in this nation right now, particularly politically. And we're seeing a full-fledged, all-out attack on Black voters. And I think that we have to do a couple of things. One, I think we have to stand up against and demand, from this administration that our voting rights be protected. And I think there's an opportunity with the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act and the For the People Act. So we should be applying pressure right now. But the second thing too is I think we have to organize ourselves. We have to shift the paradigm. As long as we center racism, we will center white folks. And that's part of the problem. We got to stop centering white people. We have to literally decide what it is that we want as a vision. We know that we're in a certain reality right now, right? And so in the meantime, while we're in this reality, we have to literally do everything we can to build the power we build for our communities. That's why our organization, Black Voters Matter, is not really just about elections. The electoral process is one vehicle for getting power in our community, but organized power is realized power. What we're doing is we're building the ecosystem out, the political infrastructure. Last year, we were able to fund and put resources, over $10 million directly in the hands of 600 Black-led grassroots groups. That's how we build power. So what we have to do is literally be able to create, building out the capacity of our community to be able to do this work. And the third thing is we have to also have a vision of where we want to go, or we'll continue to keep responding to these folks who've shown us over hundreds of years of who they are, right? And that they are not, that doesn't seem like there's really any intent to actually share power and live in a true democracy. We have to make it be so. And so I think that those are the three things that we have to do. We have to organize right now where we are, because we got to back folk up off us, and demand literally those folks that we've placed in office, demand that they actually protect our voting rights. We've got to organize our communities so that we're building our power. And then 3, we have to really set this vision. I always ask folks, one of the questions, no matter where I go, I ask people, what would America look like without racism? Most people have never even considered that conversation, considered that question. And my challenge with this, the reason why I asked that question, how will we ever create an America or a nation without racism if we're not even envisioning, There's nothing that has been brought into the physical world that wasn't first envisioned. So it's really important that while we are building, while we're doing what we got to do, we got to radically reimagine every single system in this nation. And the bottom line is we don't need to lose heart. Part of the attack is not because we losing, y'all, it's because we winning. There are some things that are like the old dinosaur is on his last leg. Like this is Custer's last stand. So
I often refer to this period as the death pangs of white supremacy, because either white supremacy is going to survive or democracy is going to survive. And which brings me to you, Captain Barnes. Thank you again for joining us. I'm looking at January 6th from the perspective of the threat that it actually poses to this country. I actually, for a minute, I stopped talking about it because I didn't want to sound like an alarmist. But when I saw when I saw that Confederate flag in the rotunda, like when I saw them with their feet up on the Speaker of the House's desk, to me, that signified that this is a clear and present threat to the United States of America. Yet it's black people who get treated as if we are such.
Well, once again, I also would like to thank you for the opportunity to come on your show, Brother Ben and Sister Ford and my good brother Carl Mack. You know, that's my wingman, that's my ride or die, and so we go way back. And, you know, this opportunity to talk about a perspective of a veteran compared to a everyday citizen. It absolutely breaks my heart to see the videos of all of the military retirees, military veterans, active duty military members that participated in what is without question an insurrection. Statistically, military veterans have been overrepresented in those that have been charged in this insurrection. Nearly 1 out of 5, almost 20% of those charged have a military background. Now, we only exist in the population at 7%. So how in the world can we have that many military members who felt that they needed to go to the Capitol, storm it, and destroy every tenet of the Constitution that's ever been written and read? That to me breaks my heart. And so I look for and have had some discussions on what could possibly be some of the reasons that our members would feel the need or the desire to storm the Capitol on that particular day. And so I hearkened back really to the oath of office that we take as officers and enlisted men in the military. And so if you go to the words and literally read the words, first of all, unbeknownst to most people, there are 2 different oaths that are taken, one by officers and one by the enlisted non-commissioned officers of the military. And so here's the subtle difference. The officer oath, I solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution, not an individual. We support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and I will obey the orders of the president. This is the enlisted oath. I will obey the orders of the president of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me. That piece does not exist in the officer oath. The officer oath said that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and I take this obligation freely. And so I have to believe that these members felt that they were supporting and defending the Constitution in some twisted way. I don't know how you can come to that realization, but they felt allegiance to the president. They felt allegiance to Donald Trump. And that's a dangerous thing to put yourself into. And here's why. When I worked at the White House military office, in the Office of Presidential Contingency Programs, we made it clear, we made it very certain that we're not about supporting the man. We're in support of the presidency, the office of the president. And that's what makes it easy as a military member, regardless of your political affiliation, to support the presidency. It doesn't matter who's in the office as commander in chief, we support the presidency. And so these misguided members are somehow under the impression that they were doing their solemn oath, following their solemn oath by storming the Capitol because they pledged allegiance to a man and not to an ideal. That's my
You know, I
perspective
do.
on what's going on.
Wow. Go ahead.
I would like to share just a quick thought around that. While I think that there is some, I agree that there's some truth with that. Let me say that we always operate and give space and grace to white folks around ignorance. It ain't ignorance. At the end of the day, these are also, let's be clear, like there were millions of white folk right in this country that succeeded from this nation because they did not want the end of slavery. My point is this whole system, this whole idea that white folks in some way value democracy and even this allegiance. No, their allegiance wasn't just to Trump. Their allegiance is to white supremacy. Their allegiance is to white control and white privilege. And we've got to call that out because at the end of the day, it creates this context as if they're just innocent and following orders. No, while he has manipulated and used that space, I am clear that there is a contingent in this country that is willing to destroy democracy, that don't fundamentally, matter of fact, I would even argue that Black folk in this country make democracy be real, that fundamentally we have been consistent around our fight for democracy. They have not. And so we have to really recognize, I think that there is a large group of folk in this nation that are literally, they lend themselves to this idea of democracy as long as it gives them the appearance or the ability to dominate others, that it becomes a propaganda piece, not a principle or a value. And so that's why we have to call it. We have to call it out and we have to call them to the task because their actions have been quite consistent. They have not fundamentally shown that they believe in democracy. Some elements here or there, as long as they are in power and in control. But I will say that what we've seen, particularly from our community, to the extent that America has democracy, we have been consistent as soldiers, as in the military, when we were mistreated and treated differently from other folks. The fact that America is still standing and we ain't burned it down is reflective of our belief in something great.
That's what I'm. The fact that we as a people, because I'm gonna be honest with you, like we talk about on the show, we're gonna go around the table. I want to get everybody in on this part of the conversation because we talk about on this show pretty regularly how like there's something that's pulsating in our blood as Black people that is both the element of our edge. We work harder. We have to. We survive trauma. We've had to. We are literally survivors. Like if you want to see survival of the fittest, we are the product of the people who survived the most egregious atrocities in the history of mankind, and yet we're still here. But yet and still, we are treated as if we are enemy number one. I want to go back to you, Captain Barnes, because as we talk about this, you know, it really is a question of how America is going to view what the public enemy really is, because for a long time, America has been viewing Black people as public enemy number one. But those white supremacists showed on January 6th that they are the clear and present threat to this democratic experiment. Speak to that for me.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I love, excuse me, I love Brother Mack's comment from a couple of shows ago where there's a huge difference between ignorance and stupidity. And so when you willingly and knowingly violate laws and there's no question that anybody who stormed the Capitol on the 6th of January were fully aware of what they were doing. That was their mission. That's what they came to town for, and that's why they did it. And so as you know, if you look back in our history, you know, the military and the citizenry have turned on itself many, many times. We actually had to pass a law known as Passe Comitatus that forbids the government from using military troops on its own citizens. So there's a long line, a long history of this kind of behavior, this kind of activity. And so I don't know, I can't speak to how the citizenry is viewed by a crazy mob. I mean, those people aren't thinking rationally. So why they thought this was appropriate and the right thing to do, it befuddles me. It's beyond my comprehension.
So Captain Barnes, I want to ask this question because you were in you've seen two very unique experiences and been at the center of them. You know, when the 9/11 attacks occurred, if I'm not mistaken, you were in the White House, correct?
That's correct. On 9/11, I was the deputy director of what's known as presidential contingency programs. And due to the fact that all of the leadership was out of town, I was only a commander in 05 at the time in the White House military office. All of the senior representatives were out of town. I mean, my boss's boss was down in Florida with the president. And other senior leaders in the White House were in New York at the time. And there was an exercise going on in Omaha. And so I found myself as the senior military member aboard in the White House, physically in the White House on 9/11.
And I know that there's a picture that I love looking at where you're bending down on one knee and there's a briefing with Condi Rice and Vice President Cheney. And so the thing that I'm asking, here is, having been right there in that decision-making critical role, how did you compare that moment to what you were witnessing on January 6th? Or is there a difference to you?
Well, I'll tell you while there are very few differences, in my opinion, America was under attack in both cases. I mean, our democracy was being attacked at the Capitol steps by insurrectionists of our own citizenship. And on 9/11, our country was being attacked by foreign bodies using airplanes as weapons. So they're very much similar, and the same kind of scenario exists.
Thus, that oath of office is in effect. Thus, that oath of office against protecting against enemies, both foreign and domestic. But, as Sister Brown is so eloquently stating, but when white folks are looking at white folks attack democracy, maybe it's not an attack.
Exactly that part, Dr. Mack. That's like, because if it's time for America, and Adrienne, I want to bring you in here, and Sister Brown, I want to bring you back into this as well, because in terms of defending America from enemies, domestic and foreign, we need America to make up its mind right now, Adrienne, who they're defining as a domestic enemy, because we have shown, as LaTosha said, that at every turn of this country, we have been there as Black people promoting democracy, serving in the military, serving in wars, doing our part, shedding our blood. And here we see white supremacy has made it very clear that they are a domestic threat. Adrienne, speak to whether or not America is actually going to ever recognize white supremacy as a threat that it really is.
I really don't know that America will recognize white supremacy or see us Black and brown faces as equals, because unfortunately, America was built on our subjugation and keeping us down. And, our whole capitalistic system, it really relies on the levels of oppression, on these power structures. And there are things that define a lot of white people's identities, and they are willing to fight to the death to maintain that sense of supremacy, that superiority. Otherwise, it's like they don't feel that they have anything else. And also, what's the point? Because our entire system is built on it. So I really don't think that America in its own can ever recognize it or truly dismantle it. I think you need to dismantle essentially the entire system and start anew.
Yeah. And Adrienne, I think you bring up a good point. It reminds me of what LaTosha was saying, this idea that Black people have remained committed to democracy, yet and still, although white America continues to perpetuate this narrative that they're committed to democracy, their actions don't always line up. Recently, we've seen this thin blue line movement grow and grow and grow, but that commitment to the thin blue line came into question recently when we saw General Milley taking a stance with critical race theory. And then all of a sudden now that allegiance to the thin blue line started to backfire. Even on January 6th, we saw attacks against law enforcement. So I think, LaTosha, could you speak to even the fact that it's not just the allegiance to democracy, there's other principles that this group of white Americans have said, yes, we believe in law enforcement, we believe in the thin blue line, we believe in democracy, but their actions don't add up.
Let's just start from the beginning. All men are created equal. Like, when does that happen? Like, I'm just saying, the bottom line is I think the Declaration of Independence is one of the most powerful and beautiful documents, right? But at the end of the day, this country has always been at the backdrop or at this intersection of hypocrisy. That at the end of the day, at the same time they were creating and drafting a document that said that all men were created equal and endowed by their creator, they were enslaving millions of Africans and creating genocide on our indigenous brothers and sisters. And so, and even if you were a white man, if you didn't have property, for some reason you weren't you weren't considered equal either. And women, forget it, you were nowhere in the space. My point is that America has always been this dichotomy of, one, what is the propaganda and idea of America, and then two, what is the actual practical application, and if it's to be real. The beauty, what I do think that the contribution of what Black people have made in this country is that fundamentally we have literally, to the extent we're testing all of those systems. We literally expose America in a particular kind of way, right? Not just to ourselves, to this nation, but around the world. And I also believe that we have, to the extent that what we've seen democratic practices that we've pushed and had to force and drag this country along around that. And so I think that what we're seeing now is one thing that you can say that you can use a propaganda and you can have it. It's almost like if people don't know what's going on in your house, right? Household, you can fool everybody like the marriage is perfect. But then when people start getting a peek of what's happening, right, then how do they respond to that? And so what I think happened, Trump in many ways I think that he was very destructive to not just to America, like internally, but the image to America. I believe the foreign policy, the way that people see really outside of this nation see America, that has shifted. The whole notion of, it's kind of like what Hong Kong said. America was saying, oh, you have the democracy, and Hong Kong was like, shut up and sit down somewhere. Like, how you gonna tell us about democracy? Go deal with your Black folks and then come back and talk to us, right? And so I think that on some level, America is being exposed in a particular kind of way. The beauty about it is that in any time, I believe that when the truth comes to the surface, it gives us an opportunity to uproot it and do something about it. I do believe that there is tremendous potential and possibility in this nation, right? When I look at my Asian brothers and sisters and Black folk and white folks, like even in last year, what gives me hope is in the George Floyd uprising, that was the largest uprising ever in this nation's history. If you looked at the faces, it was multi-generational, it was multiracial. And so what you saw is, to me, that is what is America. What we have to do is, I think that there's been engaged, part of the reason my work, 45% of half of the country don't even bother to vote, right? They're completely disengaged in the process, but that ain't about the people. That has been intentional. That has been an intentional process around literally getting people to not engage in the process because they're a small group of folk that want to have power. And so even the work that we do when we created Black Voters Matter, our name is Black Voters Matter and not Black Votes Matter, because there are folks that care about Black votes and don't care about voters. Our focus is how do we empower and connect with Black folk that literally create an independent political framework so that we're thinking about power unapologetically and what our vision is going forward in the future. And so at the end of the day, what I do think is happening is that they're at this crossroad. At some point, the chickens do come home to roost. At some point, like what you have propagated around the world, people are going to hold you at that standard. At some point, what I do think is we are at this fork in the road. White supremacy is no longer going to be able to carry America forward, right? Literally what is going to happen is this country is going to implode. It is going to be a democracy, or it will not. It cannot sustain. It is at both of those things at this point are literally bumping up against each other. And so it's going to be interesting to see what America chooses. If they choose, like white America chooses, if they choose literally moving forward on how do we go to another step around this American experiment, or how do you kill it? Because both cannot coexist. What exists in the Declaration of Independence, that cannot exist in the context of white supremacy. Preach. And so that's where we are right now.
And LaTosha, Lincoln talked about
you preach right there.
President Lincoln talked about this divided nation in his Gettysburg Address. But as I was listening to you speak truth to power, the whole danger of critical race theory, just sat right on me. And so I look at the Civil War this way as we're trying to describe this. When the Civil War was fought, you got to remember there were fathers fighting against sons, brothers fighting against each other, cousins, families sitting on opposite sides of the spectrum. And when this bloody conflict ended, and we knew that it was fought over slavery, America decided, look, man, we got to heal. We got to heal on the issues that tore us apart. Well, the issues that tore us apart was families that fought against each other, and those families fought against each other because of slavery. So race was an issue. And so what did we see America addressed? America addressed white folks. So what did Lincoln do? In his second term as a Republican, Lincoln said, in order to heal white folks, I'm going to bring in a Democrat, Andrew Johnson. In order to heal white folks, I'm not even going to charge you with treason. As a matter of fact, I'm going to let you put your statues up and glorify those treasonous acts. As a way to heal, we're ultimately going to take the white folks, the federal troops that are in the South protecting Black folks who are now beginning to be a part of political power, education. Ruther B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden said, let's heal white folks. So we're going to take the federal troops out. When the modern day civil rights movement was making progress, they said, well, let's heal America from whatever little gains they got by bringing in Ronald Reagan. Now, Obama comes in as the first Black president. White folks say, let's heal America and let's bring in Trump. Now, we win the election, and they say, in order to heal from losing the election, let's now bring in voter suppression. But for everything that America has done to heal white folks because of what happened in the Civil War, America, has she ever turned around and in earnest said, let's deal with the issue of race and let's heal from that. She's got plenty of examples of healing over whites, but when it comes to the issue of race, she's never wanted to sit down and truly heal from that.
Well, Carl,
let me
I'll
jump
just
in there.
add-
Okay, go ahead, Sister Brown.
I'll just say this real quickly and I have to go because I agree with you. I would just change the word again. I'm not so sure it's about healing white folks. It's been about appealing to white folks. It's what can we do to appeal to white folks, right? So that at the end of the day, they have never done any, you can't do any healing and you don't get rid of the cancer. The cancer has been structural racism and the idea that there is some humanity that is less than others. There's something, when you look at another human being and you hang them and you have a party outside, there's something fundamentally wrong with your spirit, right? So your healing is not being addressed if you're literally coalescing around structural racism. So what they've done is what we do is we make an appeal to white people. How can we unify white folks around this idea, this false narrative of whiteness? And literally they go to this shift every single time. There's never, if anybody needs healing, I would even argue white folks need healing greater than we do, right? Because at the end of the day, even our experience has us rooted in this reality of that racism exists. We can't even hide from it or run from it, even if we want to, because we're impacted by it. And so I do believe that you're right, Arthur, that at the end of the day, there has been more of a focus on white folks, but part of the problem is that white folks don't think they need no healing because they don't think nothing wrong with them, right? They think that you just got to appeal to whiteness, when fundamentally therein lies the problem.
Yes. Yeah, we listen, I know we talking politics, but Sister Brown, you've taken us to church. I want to thank you. I know you have to go, so we're going to take a break, and I want to reset. Captain Barnes, I know if you could stay a little bit longer, that would be great, because we want to unpack a couple more things about this from a security perspective. And Adrienne, if you have more time, we would love but we're going to take a quick break. James, give us a little music. Everybody go refreshing your coffee. Don't go far, because this conversation is going to continue and to expand even further. Thank you all so much. James, it's in your hands. A quick break, and we'll be right back after this. No, I literally got to go get more coffee, guys. I'll be right back.
Good morning again, everyone. Make sure that you stay tuned. We'll be right back, y'all. You make sure you hit that like button, y'all. Share, comment, subscribe, wherever you're watching from this morning, y'all. Make sure that you tune in and get it going.
Bang, bang, they wonder, can I get some? What I got's for everyone. Yeah, sit down and get to know the sofa. Stand up when it's taking over. Come here if you was getting sober. What I got's for everyone. Yeah. In the bathroom, in the kitchen, on the balcony is where you'll find me. I got feet away from my hometown. I'm way up on the coke and rum. You stay up, hoping I'll come home. Don't wait up.
Good morning, y'all. Good morning. Good morning again. Make sure that y'all are hitting that like button, y'all. It's like it or not.
Way up on the coke and rum. You stay up, hoping I'll come home. Don't wait up, 'cause I'm way too gone. Don't
Shout out Justice.
wait up. Turn it up, yeah, yeah. 'Cause this song is such a classic. Turn it up, yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, sorry isn't sorry does. She just wanna cut up in the car, told her start it up. I don't wanna see it from your eyes unless it's Cartier. Ran into my old chick, she said you ain't playing fair, playing fair, playing fair. Nah, I ain't playing fair, playing fair, playing fair. Nah, I ain't playing fair. Asked her why she staying there, she said she don't know. I had to ask some more, but I really had to go and get my bop on. Yeah, I get my bop on. If she needs some good, tell her she got hop on. She know I'm the top dog. I know she a hot one, but Lindsay's on the feet, and you know.
Bruh, 1984, I appreciate you.
Yeah, I get my bop on. If she needs some good, tell her she got hop on. She know I'm the top dog. I know she a hot one, but Lindsay's on the feet, and you know I.
Alicia, good morning.
With my hot sauce, she ain't with no knockoff. See them, we gon' pop off. Uber getting dropped off, kicking in the door. We ain't knock on it. Ice on your beat, and you know it got the bop to it. Running up the streams like the stock market. They ain't with no beat, tell them stop talking. Rock a goatee like I'm Hulk Hogan. Put on R&B, then I hit her with the slow stroking. Then I told her she could hop on it, hop on it, hop on. Yeah, I get my bop on. If she needs some good, tell her she got hop on. She know I'm the top dog. I know she a hot one, but Lindsay's on the feet, and you know I got the size on. Yeah, I get my bop on. Yeah, I get my bop on.
Don't wanna spend a minute without you. I know you feel the same. So come on, give me love. I'ma show you how to move with my body. Come hit me with your touch and make me wanna say.
Tiger, I appreciate you, Tiger.
And yeah, you know what's up. Ain't nothing I won't do for your body. So give me all you got right now. I know I'm yours, baby. So come give me love. You know you're mine, baby. So come give me love.
Man, we're not live now, are we?
Hang on.
I get a high every time we kiss. Can't get enough, baby. So come give me love. All of the love, I can't fake it. When I'm with you, my legs go weak. Can you hear it? I think my heart just skipped a beat. This feeling is getting so strong. Love me till the morning, love me all night long. There's something special about you. You're the one that I want. So come on, give me love. I'ma show you how to move with my body. Come hit me with your touch and make me wanna say, damn. And yeah, you know what's up. Ain't nothing I won't do for your body. So give me all you got right now. I know I'm yours, baby. So come give me love. You know you're mine, baby. So come give me love.
Welcome back, everyone. I want to expand this conversation, and thank you to Captain Barnes. Thank you for sticking with us, and Adrienne, thank you so much for sticking with us. I actually want to just kind of I want to blow the frame out of the I want to expand it outside of the box a little bit, because here's my question that after we have these conversations, it always leads me to this. And Georgia and Dr. Mack, if you could assist me with this as we explore this, are we fooling ourselves? Does anyone else, every now and then I feel like I'm fooling myself by trying to work through this system when the system is literally designed for our oppression as Black people? And Captain Barnes, you have served. Have you ever had that feeling in your service, and as you have served in the military, how have you talked to yourself about that feeling?
Well, you know, I have to tell you that a statement that Doc Rivers put out there, it hits me to my core every time I look at these kind of evolutions. The fact that the country that Black folks love so much does not love us back. I mean, to me, when he said that, that was just so powerful. And so when I look here at a country where I stood up and I support and defend the Constitution, I put my life on the line every time I go to work. And this is a feeling that I think many military folks have. How can a country that I served for 31 years in treat me and my people the way they treat us? How can service members get up and go to work every day and feel good about standing there and waving the flag and putting a hand over our hearts and singing the national anthem? How are we supposed to feel when we look on television and we approach people in the streets every day and those people don't love us the way that we love this country? It's difficult for military members to do that, but once again, those of us that swore a solemn oath, we feel very strongly about that. I mean, there's times where I've choked up listening to the national anthem. I consider myself a patriot. I've been there when, like on 9/11, when the impending doom, we thought that the next airplane was coming to hit us in the secure, undisclosed location we were at. And we didn't know how much longer we were going to be around on this earth. So why do people treat our people that way? It's unexplainable to me why it happens that way. And it's very difficult to talk yourself into and feel good about sometimes about going and supporting this flag and supporting this nation when there are insurrectionists that will storm the Capitol. There are people that will burn Black Lives Matters flags in the middle of a public space, that will get on TV and speak in the terms that they do about Black people and about Black lives and why they're not important. It's difficult, but somehow or another, our loyalty comes through, and we do what we're trained to do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, on 1/6, our people who had military training used that training against our own democracy. If you've seen some of the pictures, you've seen the ladder maneuver, one hand on the shoulder and the military members dressed out in helmets and tactical gear. They didn't learn that on the street. They learned that with taxpayers' dollars in training facilities all over the world. I mean, that bothers me. That really pisses me off when I see the fact that those members used what was designed to be used against an enemy, against our own people and against our own democracy. It shouldn't be that way. So that boils my blood. It definitely does.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And Georgia, I want to come to you, and Adrienne. I want the question to kind of resonate between the two of you, because this is compounded. This reality of what it is to be Black in this country is compounded even more being Black women in this country, in terms of like how do we I often think about how do we wake up as Black people and face this country and pledge allegiance, if we even do that anymore. But it's compounded, and it's not only compounded in terms of Black women, but also your experience with the legal system, the experience with the healthcare system, from every single angle. Georgia, speak to that.
Well, I think Captain Barnes brought up something very profound, right? Of course, as Black people, we love this country. We built it. And so it's in our DNA, because our ancestors are the ones who cultivated the soil in which we eat from. So absolutely, we love this country. We built it, and almost to a fault. And so that is compounded in being a woman, because there are more layers. Not only are we fighting through the racism, but then the patriarchy as well. And that breaks down in so many different ways, not just in the workplace, but when you show up to the clinic. There's a saying that will probably stick with me for the rest of my life. Doctors are to Black women what police are to Black men. So when you look at the disparities in birthing rates, the amount of Black women who are dying while giving childbirth in this country, you would think we're a third world country. But no, it's not that we're a third world country. It's just that our systems are so inherently racist that they can't work for Black people. And so, although I don't consider myself an abolitionist, I will say that one of the most powerful one of the most powerful interviews that I've heard was with Angela Davis, civil rights leader Angela Davis, and she talked about the time when slavery existed and there were conversations about abolishing slavery. And simultaneously, while people were being so radical in their idea of abolishing slavery, she said there were just as many people who were being so radical in their idea of reforming it. Reforming slavery. They're like, there's nothing wrong with slavery. It's just, we just need to reform it so that it can work for everybody. That sounds so ridiculous to think about reforming slavery so that it could work for everyone. And so maybe it will take 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years removed for us to look back and say, oh my God, it sounds so ridiculous that we would try to reform some of these systems that were created to keep us oppressed. But yet and still, Ben, yes, we're here and we're trying to reform things. We're trying to adjust things. We're trying to put new rules in place. We're trying to fix it. But maybe we just need to accept that it's broken and it can't be fixed, and that we need to create something and create it with intentionality in a way where it is designed to work for us in the same capacity that it's designed to work for our white counterparts.
Adrienne, speak to that for us.
Yes, I absolutely agree. The way that it's structured, being Black and being woman at that intersectional place of oppression, gender, and race, it seems like you're getting hit from both sides. And you know what? It really seems that we're often left behind, yet we are the first ones to experience a vast majority of things. As it's been said, Black women are the canaries in the coal mine. When things impact us, we are the ones to speak up and say, hey, this is wrong, this is a problem. And people often and continually ignore us until it happens to either white women or it happens to Black men. And it just continues to be a part of the systemic oppression that Black women face that is so incredibly unique. And yet we continue to be silenced or ignored, even though we essentially are the ones who have these adverse experiences or can tell you the direction society is going in, and the fact that that oppression will reach you very soon. But thank you so much for having me. I've got to head out. But thank you again for having me this morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, sister.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Mack.
No, man, look, they've said it, but the feeling I do have is when we think about the challenges that we're dealing with today, and, when I was on the streets of Seattle, or whenever I've been working in our community, but in particular, when I was on that battlefield of civil rights as the chief servant of the Seattle King County NAACP, many times, I've even had brothers that said to me, Carl, you got to understand, man, this is a marathon. You got to slow down. And I could never remember a time when I felt hopeless about anything. I remember when they took away affirmative action in the state of Washington. It never, ever bothered me. It never did. And even today, with all the challenges that we have today, it never bothers me. And it doesn't bother me because I don't care. It doesn't bother me because I compare the conditions and the challenges we have today to what our ancestors had. Their challenges were just so much greater. And yet their persistence, their determination, their ingenuity brought us to where we are today. We're like, when we think that it's just so much, how do we overcome? In many ways, we're like the privileged children. I didn't grow up privileged. My mom and daddy didn't have it like that, right? And yet my children are like spoiled out of their daggone minds. They're very privileged. We're privileged. But if we look back at just how incredible, I mean, when you think about how bad it was, that's when you just see like, man, these were some phenomenal, our ancestors were absolutely phenomenal. They were creative and they never, ever gave up. So, you know, I love this fight, man, you know, and trust and believe we're going to win. But I will tell you this, and I want I want all of us to keep this in mind because history is very, very, very clear about this. Do not ever think that one day we're going to beat racism. Racism is a chameleon. It always changes. It went from chains, physical chains on us, and then it morphed into black codes, grandfather clause, literacy tests, separate but equal, voter suppression. It's always going to be there. And that is where we can't, and that may be part of what sometimes demoralizes us. So for me, I'm always looking for what is the next shape that fool is taking. And when I see him, I see you.
Yeah. Dr. Mack and Captain Barnes, you two know each other outside of the inside the struggle, but also outside of the struggle. Is that right?
I'm gonna let my captain, look, we call him Captain Barnes. Let me just go ahead and bring him into the family here, Ben. His call sign is Bone. So I'm gonna let Bone talk about how we know each other.
Oh, and when we refer to each other, we know each other by Carl's call sign, which is Noodle. And there's a long story behind that as well. So as you can imagine,
I have to hear that. Well, we're gonna get them all. I want to get all the stories over time, but let's start how do you guys know each other? Because I've got Brother Mack sent me some pictures, a second picture that there's an interesting story behind, like that story. So tell us about how you guys know each other.
So at the time, I was the Commodore of Navy Recruiting Region Central. And in that responsibility, I had responsibility for the recruiting effort for the entire Navy, going the entire Central Time Zone. Think of it that way. The Central Time Zone includes parts of 9 states, and there's over 900,000 square miles. And so that was the job I was in at the time. Carl was the executive director, I think newly the executive director around the time we met, of the National Society of Black Engineers. And so we were in a unique positions to positively affect the Black population within the Navy itself. These incredibly talented, wonderfully committed African-American college and even young people. There's a Nesby Junior chapters out there as well. And so when we first met, I was introduced to him, and from the very get-go, we melded right away. We understood that our missions were the same. Our missions were to help the talented young people, help them obtain their goals and desires, whatever it is. And I had a platform to be able to do so, to come into the Navy as officers and fly airplanes and drive submarines and everything else. At this particular time, we had the opportunity to take and use what to me is the best recruiting tool in the Navy Blue Angels, who at the time were given backseat orientation rides in the area. They were doing an air show, and they were going to media folks, and they were going to folks to try and generate more participation in the air show. Well, realizing that incredible recruiting platform actually was owned by my boss, the commander of Navy recruiting, and we should be using those backseat rides to influence our influencers, those who had opportunity to speak to people of color and young people. And so I set it up so that Carl could get a ride in the backseat of Blue Angel number 7, which is a 2-seater Blue Angel jet. And so it was 4th of July weekend. It was this time of year right here. It was the weekend before 4th of July, and we were in the Detroit Air Show. And so we met in Detroit, and the Noodle call sign came as a result of what we did the night before his ride, which was carbo load. And we went out to a great spaghetti dinner at a local restaurant. But when Carl heard about getting this opportunity to ride in the Blue Eagle jet, he wanted the e-ticket. He wanted the hardest, bestest ride this guy could give him. And so he did 2-a-day workouts for 2 months prior to this opportunity. And you can't see it in that picture. There's some other pictures, but he is cut. He is svelte.
Yeah,
and
put
he
the
is
picture back
ready
on the screen, because
for the ride. He is ready for the ride.
There's one.
So
there's one that's a wider shot where you can see them standing side by side, and Brother Mack, you look like you were fit and ready for anything.
I thought
he
it was
cut and ready to go. Now,
How did it go? How did the ride on the Blue Angel? How did that go? Yeah, you got to put him on the screen. He's laughing. It must not have gone.
No, it went great.
Is that?
It went great. He
Did
got out.
Did he hold his carbs?
He got out of the jet and he was literally wringing, soaking wet.
Yeah.
He didn't move. He sat in the jet the whole time and enjoyed the ride, but he was working the G forces.
Wow.
He talked the jet. He talked the pilot into giving him the minimum radius turn, which is the most radical maneuver. It turns the jet in its absolute tightest turn, and it pulls 7.5 times the force of gravity. 7.5 G's.
So Ben, let me tell you this. So they literally had a little lipstick camera right in front of me. So they're recording every facial expression. They're recording me throughout this whole ride. And when Bone is talking to you about a minimum radius turn, I'm telling you that when the pilot put that plane into that turn, you can hear the warning signals coming over the plane. Danger, danger, danger. It's so many G-forces. Now, when he was taking me through all the other maneuvers, the G-forces, and what happens as a result is that the blood leaves your brain. And the moment the blood leaves your brain, Bone told me the night before, he goes, Carl, when it happens, it's just going to start funneling into a tunnel. So if you see it, you gotta, they got this maneuver they call the hook maneuver. So I'm trying, but when in every other maneuver, I was good. But when he put that minimum radius turn, Bone's looking at the videotape, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, and just fade. And thus, that's how I get the call sign. He goes, you dropped like a noodle. So that
like a noodle.
Call sign. But I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this on a serious level. One of the things, Bone and I had some phenomenal experiences, and he always brought. I mean, you have to know, in the framework of the Navy, the highest ranking officer in the Navy, Bone, is the CNO. And so we had Admiral Mullins, and Admiral Mullins went on to become chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We had Admiral Roughhead, we had Admiral Greenert. So we had the highest ranking officers in the United States Navy committed to Black academic excellence. And Bone and I would come up with some of the most radical ideas. So for instance, when we talk about these opportunities, to advance your education, Bone, I want to say that what was the size of the largest check that we presented to students?
So we would come to the NSBE National Conference, and we would take an opportunity to present one of the ROTC scholarships to one of the NSBE members that had been chosen. And of course, it was the big check, the great big check that you see presented with a number on it. And I want to say, it's all based on the institution chosen. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of $350,000 check to a young Black student's education.
And so it's not that we brought one person on stage, Bone, but let me correct you. That check to the students, the largest one that I saw, now you may have seen some after I departed, but the largest check that we would present was, the one I saw was $180,000. But we may have 6 or 7 students on stage. And when when 5,000 engineering students are sitting in the audience and they see these 6 students on stages with checks for $180,000, all of a sudden people are understanding, the opportunities that are afforded. And so one of the things that amazed me was Bone also helped me get a ride on one of the most technologically advanced submarines in the world, the USS Texas. And so I want you to imagine this is a multi-billion-dollar piece of equipment. And when I'm on this submarine, there's about 150 sailors there. I'm watching a 25, 26-year-old kid or officer walk in the command center, and everybody is giving him status. And this person is now directing this submarine. And I'm thinking about what I was doing at 25 or 26. So it was just a whole different world. But, you know, and the other thing that we did that I'm very proud of is Bone, we helped recruit the largest diverse class in the history of the U.S. Naval Academy. So we've had some wonderful things. And Bone is, you know, Bone, when you said you consider yourself a patriot, no, player, you are a patriot. And I thank you so much for your service to the nation.
Well, I appreciate that.
I'm sorry. I want you to respond to that, Captain Barnes, and then I want to expand that conversation exactly from that point of you. Your perspective is one of a person who has served this country at the highest levels, and you are a Black man who sees that cognitive dissonance. But first, just go ahead and speak to that and what Brother Mack said.
Well, I'll tell you, I appreciate Brother Mack's words, and you know, we have thrown kudos onto each other, because I don't care who you are or how good you are, you can't do it without help. You can't do it without support. And it's reaching into organizations like NSBE, like NAACP, like other organizations that are designed around people of color. That's the only way you can make a difference. You don't get supported by leadership from the grassroots. You can make some strides, but during the time that Brother Mack was the executive director of NSBE, we made incredible inroads. As he said, we brought chiefs of naval operations to events. We brought the Navy drill team to events that had never been seen by the membership of NSBE. And at every juncture, we showcase the quality of the personnel that exists in this Navy. And it was personnel of all colors. It didn't matter. We were able to show people that your military, that is a part of your tax dollars, part of your security and support against enemies, foreign and domestic, if you want to use that vernacular, is there 24/7, 365 on point, ready to go.
Ben, and one of the other things that Captain did was, Bones, I want to say that at the time that we were in those positions, there were only 8 active Black admirals in the United States Navy, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
And that's the most ever in the history of the Navy. And now you go fast forward. Unfortunately, those guys retire, and the bench is not very deep. So I don't know the number off the top of my head, but there's probably less than 5 or 6 Black admirals in the entire U.S. Navy today.
Right, and so Ben, I'll tell you this. So there were 8 active Black admirals in the Navy, and I want to say that Bone had like 4 or 5 of them at my convention. And I get on stage and I say, now, who the hell had this bright idea? If somebody attacks this place, we done just lost half of the Black admirals.
Whites of January 6th, the folks from January 6th would have loved to know about that location. Right.
But no, man.
Because at the end of the day, go ahead.
No, but on the real, the opportunities that Bone was able to facilitate for our people, the same thing, man. We got a chance because of Bone. We had a chance at our conference for young people to meet the first Black to ever graduate from the U.S. Naval Academy, because at that time he was still alive, and that was Wesley Brown. And through Bone, got a chance to go to the Naval Academy, to walk on those hallowed grounds, to bring 150 to 200 Black engineers there, because the Naval Academy opens its doors and said, we want you to do your leadership training here. So it's just so many things that through him, I got a chance to learn about the opportunities to go. And when you think about the Naval Academy, you're talking about, these military academies are some of the best colleges and universities in the world, not just in America, but in the world. And so again, man, my relationship with Bone extended far beyond our work relationship. And we had a great time. It was not like it was a job, because we had so much fun doing it. And the impact that I watched this brother make to our children, to give them the absolute best opportunities in the world, I'm humbled by it, brother.
That's awesome. That is something awesome to hear. We only have a few minutes left this morning. And Captain Brown, first and foremost, thank you for spending so much time with us this morning. I know we had a lot of technical difficulties and our timing got thrown off, but you were kind enough to sit patiently with us through it all. So first and foremost, thank you for that.
Well, Brother Ben, I watched a couple of your shows, and there's no way I was going to miss this opportunity, but you got to know straight up, when my wingman called me and asked for support, I'm going to be right there on the wing. I can't let nobody get to his 6, and I got to be on point, loaded down with SAMs and surface-to-air missiles and guns and 20 Mike. I'm going to be all over that.
Wait
like a hobo on
a
ham
minute. Are you
sandwich.
saying that if somebody comes after Brother Mack, you're going to bring down the full force of the American empire on them and make sure that he's safe?
Hey, they got to know that we don't come to play. If they're messing with the Mac, we're going to be on point. We're going to unload, unleash what they say, the fire. We're going to bring the fire.
Duly noted. I ain't messing. I do want to ask. I want to, if you guys would allow me, we only got a few minutes left, but I am plagued by this question, and I hope that you can come back sometime and we can just laugh and kick it, and tell me more stories about Brother Mack that he may not be inclined to tell on air himself. So I'm hoping you can come back. But I am genuinely plagued as a black man in this country with the idea that that our only real option is working through the system when this system is built at our expense. I'm reminded of the James Baldwin and William F. Buckley debate. I think it was at Cambridge. And the question that they debated was, has the American dream come at the expense of the American Negro? And of course, we know what James Baldwin said there. But I just want to ask, because I'm not an individual who's worked through the system. Everything about my life has been to work around the system. I wasn't good in the education system, not because I wasn't smart. It just wasn't for me. I had to work my way around. I dropped out, went back, found my own education. In terms of career, same thing. I've been on the outside of this system my entire life, and I'm constantly plagued. But to the two of you, what do you say to us? Because I'm almost a firm believer that it's impossible to change the system. And I'm talking specifically about American democracy, this democratic experiment that those white supremacists wanted to overthrow on the 6th. I would have marched up the steps myself, the way they did George Floyd. Right. I'm just curious. Speak to that.
Bone.
Go ahead, Noodle. Go ahead.
For me, I'm just the opposite. I recognize the system. Like they said, finding a solution is first recognizing the problem. I recognize it. But again, man, I like Sister Brown said, the words, the principles of the democracy, the principles stated about these inalienable rights and the equality of man. Beautiful. So the idea of helping America to do it, and then again, because when I studied history, I just internalized those times, because the brain is a very powerful tool. You can, if you allow yourself, you could just allow yourself to go back and to understand all that we overcame and the debt that we paid. No, man, there are solutions to this. And again, if I had to just go to one person, it'd be Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall Thurgood Marshall took what America says she most valued. America says we value the Constitution of the United States. And Thurgood said, is that right? So he took that document and the number of battles that he won for us as a people, using the very document that she said she loved and respected.
That's it.
No, man, you know, and look, to work around the system, create a new system, work within the system, long as we progressing, I'm about it. So.
Captain Barnes, I wanna jump in there and flip it and reverse it real quick because that's why I love having Dr. Mack do this, because the flip side of it is that I need America to work. As a black father, I need us to fix this thing because, you know, no matter how deeply rooted my revolutionary spirit is, I got kids to raise. And so, yeah, I mean, our best bet might be this democratic experiment. Will America, though, choose to put down white supremacy so that this thing, like Sister Brown said, so that this thing can actually work?
So let me give you my example is as a Naval Academy guy, you know, you don't have any choice but to try and work with this within the system. Getting into the place does you no good unless you exit it with a diploma on the backside. And so we found that the system was not really designed to support those brothers that were having a little bit of an academic problem at the time. And so we found a way to work within the system by forming our own study groups. Well, you know, if there's no formal way of remediating those that are having issues, then the brothers will get together and we will self-remediate our own folk. Because everybody that comes there may not have had the unknown to most folks is everybody there isn't a 4.0 student. You don't come in with 4.0 grades necessarily. And based on your primary education, if you didn't get the IB, AP courses where you came from, well, you might have a little bit more difficult getting through some of the technical math subjects, but it's not impossible. And so we form and we support our own folks within the construct of the building itself. We would help our own folk, our own brothers, especially those that were on academic, athletic programs. There are educators that are designed to help support those brothers. And so we make sure that if you had the chops to get in the front door, we were going to help you get out the back door. And I'll tell you about and I love my aviation community, but my aviation community has never been fully supportive of the African-American aviator. In the history of the Navy, there's never been more than 2.9% African-American aviators. Why is that? Because aviation it's the club. Aviation in the military, across all the military services, it's the club. It's the elite forces. It's the go fast, fly supersonic, fly upside down, do minimum radius turns. That's where everybody wants to be. And so I will tell you of an instance where I was in a position to complain about it, didn't do any good. But at one point, the AQT, the aviation qualification test score it took to get into the aviation program, the number was raised totally consciously knowing that it was going to reduce the number of African Americans and women who were going to be qualified to go into aviation services. Now, why would you do that? Under the guise of making it more safe. It was going to be safer if we raised the qualification test score. We were going to be a better force. That's not true. Okay?
Yeah,
because
but Bone,
the number
I want to say this though, Bone. I'm convinced, brother, that if you and I had been in the Navy as aviators at the same time,
would have been like Maverick and Goose, baby. They would have made a movie about us.
Hey, let's do it because we only have a few minutes left, and I want to give. We're gonna close out with our DJ playing some music to take us out of here. But before we do that, pull up that picture one more time, cause you know. Y'all some fly brothers back. I mean, y'all fly now, but y'all look like y'all ready to take on the world right there.
Yeah. That's what we did, man.
See,
so
he got the
I'm
VIP shirt on. He was a VIP.
Right.
I love it. Listen, Captain Barnes, thank you so much, Captain Barnes, for joining us and spending so much time with us today. And Dr. Mack, always a pleasure having you hang out with us as we continue to do this work here. I'd love to have you back sometime.
Hey man, like it or not, I'm gonna be back tomorrow. I'm gonna be back tomorrow, like it or not.
There you go. There you go. That's it.
I do want to come back because I'll tell you quickly, I have a perspective on policing in America and the connection to the U.S. military. I will tell you that a large quantity of our police force is former military, especially Marines and infantry. So I'll come back and share that with you another time.
No, I'm going to be honest with you. Yes, ASAP, because that is the connection that plagues me. And I know we've been talking a long time today, but I just got to say what we see happening abroad is reflecting internally. And we can't expect us to take these tanks, the program with the Pentagon that's sending all these tanks to our local. Yeah, but those tanks were first used overseas. I would love to have that conversation. So thank you all so much.
As we said, we put warheads on foreheads. We don't do community policing in the military. We put warheads on foreheads, and that's what those folks are out there doing right now.
And that's what's coming home to roost to the black apps. Listen, we can, again, as you all can tell in the audience, that we could talk about this all day. If we don't break here now, we will never break. Captain Barnes, thank you so much. Dr. Mack, thank you so much. To all of our guests, Adrienne Lawrence, thank you so much. To LaTosha Brown, thank you so much. To Anthony Holland, I recalled it. Thank you so much. And Georgia Ford, thank you so much for all the work that you do. DJ Exclusive, thank you, brother. It is in your hands. We will see everyone tomorrow morning.
DJ, play that song.
Thank y'all again, everyone, for joining this morning, y'all. If y'all love the show, make sure that you hit that like button. Make sure that you share, comment, subscribe, and make sure you know when Like It or Not is going down, y'all. And also, if you have not done so, make sure that you join patreon.com/like it or not, patreon.com/like it or not. And we do have a Patreon event on Friday, y'all. So make sure that your face is in the place, y'all. Have a good one, y'all. It's Conference Called Wednesday. Love y'all, mean it. Deuces.
You think we're okay, baby, you're dreaming. You brought this on us and you don't know how deep it cuts. No, you don't know how much it hurts. You can't hold on.